I'm very sorry I cannot attend this meeting, and I do hope that you will have a nice time. I'm currently teaching soils and climate far from you and Brittany, and I'm not able to attend, but I want to summarize soil and climate because it's such an overlooked story that we need to know it. Soil was always contributing to glasshouse effect by producing CO2, because many organisms in soil respire when there is oxygen. But there are also, in soils where there is no oxygen, some bacteria that have very funny respirations, which produce glasshouse effect as well. For example, some of those bacteria are using CO2, and the result is that they produce methane. I think that you know that because those bacteria, they are active in the methane production units. It's them that are converting CO2 and organic matter into methane. Some other in soils which are devoid of oxygen are producing from nitrate. They use nitrate for respiration. They are producing nitrogen peroxide. So this nitrogen peroxide and methane production, which respectively are 230 times more and 50 times more active than CO2 in glasshouse effect, they occur in wet soils where there is little or no oxygen, and they contribute to make the soil one of the players of glasshouse effect. Now, the second thing is that when we started to use soil, especially in Eurasia, we amplified this. For example, in our practices, the production of glasshouse effect is enhanced by tilling, plowing, or manipulating the soil. Although you kill many animals and mushrooms and so on, the bacteria survive the plowing and they get more oxygen, so they respire more and they start to eat faster the dead organic matter of the soil, and they produce CO2. They produce more CO2 than they should otherwise, because otherwise they are a bit limited in oxygen. So it means that we've been emitting CO2 by plowing, by tilling since 10,000 years. It's very important. It's the basis of a book of Professor Rudiman, a climatologist, a Northern American climatologist who wrote a magnificent book on the fact that by plowing we were emitting 1/3 of the total of the CO2 we've been emitting. The two other thirds are since 200 years an emission due to fossil fuels. But we've been emitting a lot of CO2 by plowing, and it was just, making a trend for the climate to cooling, to stop down, and the climate was stabilized. We also, by wet production in submerged fields, we started 5,000 years ago to emit more methane than what was emitted before, just because we started to have those anoxic rice paddle soils. And in the soils, you have a lot of methane and nitrate. And also, more recently, by using nitrates as fertilizers, we were giving to some bacteria that are using nitrate as oxidizers in soil, that are respiring with nitrate, we were giving them an additional way of producing nitrogen peroxide. So fertilizing with nitrate, irrigation, and plowing have been adding to the glasshouse effect of produced by soil, and it's a bad news in a situation where we have too much of glasshouse effect. A bit is good, because otherwise it will be -50 on Earth. Too much is too much, and we are entering too much. I showed you that soil has a link to glasshouse effect, that we enhanced this positively. I'd like now to show you in a third section that it's bizarre, because soil can be a way of mitigating climate change and glasshouse effect. Whenever you have organic matter in soil, these dead leaves, dead animals, dead microbes, this dead organic matter is of course, slowly respired and used by animals and microbes in soil, but slowly it stays tens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. So you can store carbon in soil because the carbon entering with organic matter is not immediately respired. This is the base, the core idea of the 4 per mile. This is the idea that if you add to all the soils worldwide 0.4% of carbon, that is 4 per mile, you offset the production of glasshouse effect by human beings of the year. 4 per miles per year is offsetting our glasshouse effect production. So some limits. It's not a reason to go on with emission of glasshouse gas. We should stop that. Absolutely. It's just to resolve what we already emitted. Second, there are some soils which are not suitable for that. If it's too sandy, there is a lot of respiration and organic matter will not be stable. If there is less than 10% of clay, it will not go. So some soil will not be appropriated. We will not have enough of organic matter. This calculation is just to show that it's a powerful way to conjugate with others to enhance our ability to store carbon. We have to put organic matter in soil to store carbon. It will also improve the soil because this organic matter is also feeding many animals. It's also stabilizing the soil against erosion, stabilizing the pores of soil that retain water. It's directly interacting with water and retaining water. And finally, well, it's good for climate. You see that it can be enhancing the way the soil can store carbon, but also water, the way the soil is supporting life, and the way soil is fighting against erosion. It's really a blessing, and it's better than planting forest in a way, because if you plant forest to capture carbon, your children will have to keep this forest, which is the carbon storage. If you improve the soil, you store carbon in soil, okay, but then the soil is simply better for anything our children will wish to cultivate. Cereals, soya, strawberries, that's it. It's a way of storing carbon that doesn't occupy the landscape, while storing in forest occupies the landscape, is using place to make the carbon storage. So I like it. And now I come back to my last point, how to find organic matter in sufficient amount. Several sources. First, whenever you don't cultivate to harvest, cultivate to make organic matter. In Europe, for example, the soil currently in fall and winter are brown. Nothing is growing on it. It's bad for erosion, bad for life of soil, and also bad for the landscape aesthetic. No, just cultivate things that you will kill in spring before planting whatever you want to plant. In this way, this organic matter that you will give to soil under the forms of dead twigs, but also roots, it can give 0.1 to 10 tons of carbon per hectare. It's a way of storing. So use the cultivation of intercalary cultures to store carbon. Also, the cattle and all the animals that are producing manure and remains, they can be used, especially because they're also very rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. They are also fertilizers. But whenever you use this manure from cattle or chicken and so on, you are putting organic matter in the soil. And don't forget an animal that is producing a lot of organic remains, us. We produce 100 kilograms of organic matter in our kitchens per year. If we screen that carefully and put it in the soil, it's a wonderful way of inputting carbon in the soil and handling our wastes in the best way. So it's very important to think of this recycling carbon to the soil because there are many sources and they should be used for soil. By the way, in this section where I summarize where to find carbon, I'd like to stress that there is now a conflict with bioenergy. Whenever you use this organic matter in methane production units, it's a way to divert organic matter from the soil to methane production. Whenever you burn it, when you use the organic matter for bioenergy, you just divert it from the soil. And bioenergetic solutions and use, they are just competing with the soil for organic matter. And in a way, it's good because when you burn methane from methane production units or biomass, you give back CO2 to the atmosphere that was just the year before taken from atmosphere by the plant. So you don't input new CO2. So in a way, it's good, but you don't store it. Whereas when you put the organic matter in soil, it's stored for tens, hundreds, or thousands of years, depending on the soil. So it's better for climate to use the organic matter not as a source of energy, but for soils. And we have to be very careful to this competition between energy production and life of soils, especially because, to conclude, after telling you that soil has a role on climate, we abuse this role, whereas with the 4 per mile, for example, we could use the soil to fight against, to mitigate climate change. And finally, that they are a source of carbon and organic matter if we are careful. I would like to finish by insisting putting organic matter in soil is just making our soils better. So it's not only a way to fight for climate, but also a way to fight for the next generation to get food and very good soils. So, you know, putting organic matter in the soils is really an absolute emergency from many viewpoints. Think of the water. I told you that more water is retained when there is organic matter in the soil. We are going by 2080. So in like 60 years, we will have minus 40% of rain in summer. We need soil that store water as much as they can, and for that they need organic matter. So to summarize, if you want climate, but if you like your children to have good condition for food production, put organic matter in the soil. It's an absolute emergency. I'm sure you will share a lot on how to do it, why to do it, with who to do it. Please think of it. We need it. And once again, I'm very sorry I'm not with you, but I'm sure you will do the best, and you don't need me to think of it. Do it for climate and for our children. Merci.